My name is Emma Donovan, and at 33, I never imagined my wedding day would become the most painful experience of my life. I had dreamed about this day for as long as I could remember. The dress, the flowers, the ceremony, everything had to be perfect. It was supposed to be the culmination of everything I had hoped for in my relationship with Aiden Williams, the man I'd loved for 3 years. Aiden was the kind of person you couldn't help but fall for. He was successful, kind, and had a smile that could light up a room. He wasn't just the man of my dreams. He was everything I had ever wanted and more. We met at a business seminar in San Francisco where he was presenting on digital marketing trends. I was struck by his intelligence and warmth, and as the months passed, we started building a life together. Our courtship had been like a fairy tale. It was filled with surprise weekend getaways, romantic dinners, and late-night talks about our future. Aiden was everything I had ever hoped for in a partner. We shared the same values, the same goals, and the same dreams for the future. And when I found out I was pregnant, Aiden was ecstatic. The moment I showed him the positive test, he spun me around in our kitchen, and we laughed and cried together, overwhelmed with joy. The excitement about our baby was immediate. We had made plans, talked about names, and dreamt about the kind of life we would give our child. Our love for each other was enough, or so I thought. I always knew Aiden's family would play a big role in our lives. Victoria, his mother, was the type of woman who expected nothing less than perfection. She was warm, loving, and always made an effort to include me. She invited me over for tea, shared family recipes, and told me stories about Aiden's childhood. At first, everything felt perfect. Victoria seemed to adore me, and I believed we were building a good relationship. But as the days passed, things began to change. The more I grew into my pregnancy, the more I started to notice subtle shifts in Victoria's behavior. She would ask strange questions about my past relationships. She'd give me a tight smile when she looked at my growing belly, but there was something behind her eyes that unsettled me. It was subtle at first, but I couldn't ignore it. Her once warm gaze started to feel like something else. Maybe she was nervous about becoming a grandmother. I tried to brush it off. After all, this was a huge life change for her, too. But I should have known something was off. The weeks leading up to the wedding were a blur of preparations. I was thrilled to finally marry Aiden and start this new chapter of our lives together. We were moving our wedding date forward because of the pregnancy, wanting our child to be born into a stable, traditional family. But that's when things started getting weird. Victoria insisted on being involved in every detail. She offered her opinions on the smallest decisions, from the flower arrangements to the seating chart. I appreciated her enthusiasm, but there was something different about her energy. She seemed to be more controlling than usual, more insistent on being part of everything. Looking back, I can see now that she was gathering information, watching every decision, planning her next move. The morning of the wedding was a picture-perfect day. My bridesmaids helped me into my dress, which had been specially altered to fit my 4-month baby bump. I had chosen a simple yet elegant gown that made me feel beautiful, and for a moment, I allowed myself to believe everything was right. My father, always so composed, wiped away a tear when he saw me. The love in his eyes reminded me that no matter what happened, I wasn't alone. As I walked down the aisle, I felt a mixture of excitement and nerves. Aiden was standing there at the altar, looking every bit the man I had fallen in love with. He looked so handsome in his tuxedo. His face lit up with a smile as I approached. For a split second, I thought everything was going to be perfect, that this would be the beginning of the life we had dreamed about. But then the unthinkable happened. The priest asked, "If anyone objects to this union, speak now or forever hold your peace." It was supposed to be a formality, a moment to share our love and commitment. But before anyone could say a word, Victoria stood up from the front row, her voice cutting through the silence like a blade. "I have proof," she shouted, holding up a folder of papers, her voice filled with venom. "Emma's baby isn't Aiden's. It was conceived by someone else." The words echoed in the church, and for a moment, I felt like the ground had disappeared beneath me. Everything went silent. 200 guests turned to look at me, their expressions morphing from joy to disbelief, and then judgment. I could feel my baby kick inside me, as though they could sense my distress. My heart pounded in my chest as I glanced at Aiden, hoping it was some kind of mistake. But his face was pale, his eyes filled with confusion, hurt, and betrayal. The man I had loved for 3 years, the man I had built a future with, looked at me as though I was a stranger. I couldn't breathe. The world seemed to close in around me as I tried to process what was happening. Victoria, standing proudly at the front of the room, was holding the folder high in the air. "This is the truth," she said. "Emma has been lying to all of us." I wanted to scream, to defend myself, but the words wouldn't come. My throat tightened as I watched Aiden flip through the papers she had handed him. The documents appeared real, complete with medical letterheads and timestamps. Even I felt a brief moment of doubt, wondering how Victoria could have created such convincing evidence. Then Aiden looked at me, his eyes cold, distant, filled with a mixture of hurt and disgust that shattered me. "Is this true?" he whispered. "No, Aiden, you know me." I finally found my voice, but it felt weak, desperate. "I would never lie to you. You know I would never do that." But Victoria wasn't finished. Her voice dripped with false sympathy. "The dates don't lie, darling," she said, her words slicing through the room. "The conception had to have happened during that business trip you took to New York. Aiden was in London. You were already pregnant when you came back." I stood there, my hand protectively over my belly, my world crumbling around me. The whispers from the guests grew louder, and I felt the weight of their judgment pressing down on me. My bridesmaids stood frozen, unsure whether to defend me or step away from the scandal. And then, without a word, Aiden turned and walked away from the altar. His best man followed, then the groomsmen, one by one. People began to leave the church, some throwing pitying glances my way, others avoiding eye contact altogether. I was left standing there, alone in my wedding dress, the love of my life walking away from me. I couldn't stay. I ran out of the church, through a side door, my veil catching on the rose bushes as I fled. I didn't stop running until I reached the garden in our family's backyard, where my father found me hours later, broken and lost. That night, as I lay in my childhood bedroom, I made 2 promises. The first was to my unborn child, that no matter what anyone else believed, I would give them all the love in the world. The second was to myself, that somehow, someday, I would uncover the truth. No matter what it cost me, I would find out how Victoria had done this to me, and I would make her pay. The weeks that followed felt like a blur. I woke up every morning hoping it had all been a nightmare, only to feel my baby kick and be reminded that this was my reality. The local newspapers had a field day with the scandal, printing headline after headline about the abandoned pregnant bride and the wealthy family's shame. I couldn't even go grocery shopping without hearing whispers behind me, without feeling the weight of everyone's judgment. But I wasn't alone. My father transformed the spare room into a nursery, painting the walls a soft yellow and drawing little birds on them, saying yellow was for hope. My mother spent hours knitting baby clothes, talking to me about everything except that day. They were my anchors, and they kept me grounded when everything else felt like it was falling apart. Still, the hardest part wasn't the gossip or the pitying glances. It was Aiden's silence. He hadn't called, hadn't sent a message. He had blocked me on every platform, cutting me off completely. He had believed his mother's lies without even giving me the chance to explain. The man I thought I knew, the man I thought I could trust, had left me alone in my moment of need. And that was when I knew. I couldn't wait for him anymore. I couldn't wait for him to come back, to apologize, to see the truth. I had to take control of my life for my child's sake. The weeks after the wedding day felt like I was living in a haze, a never-ending blur of pain, confusion, and disbelief. I woke up each morning hoping it had all been some horrible nightmare, only to feel the solid, comforting presence of my baby growing inside me and realize that this was my reality. The night of the wedding, I had run from the church, the hurt in my chest too much to bear. My heart had been shattered into a million pieces, and every whisper, every look felt like another blow to my already fragile spirit. But as the days dragged on, something inside me shifted. It wasn't a sudden change or a grand realization. It was subtle, like the gentle unfolding of a flower that's been buried under the weight of the earth. I realized I couldn't just let this define me. I had to be stronger than that. For the sake of my baby, for the sake of myself, I had to find a way to move forward. The gossip was unbearable. The local newspapers ran article after article, all of them focused on the scandal. The abandoned pregnant bride, the betrayal, the wealthy family's shame. I couldn't even walk through my neighborhood without people staring, whispering behind their hands. I felt the eyes on my back everywhere I went, and even the few sympathetic glances I did receive felt hollow. No one really understood what I was going through. And to be honest, I didn't even know how to explain it. My parents, bless their hearts, did everything they could to shield me from it. My father had transformed the spare room into a nursery for the baby, painting the walls a soft yellow that reminded him of spring mornings. He told me yellow was for hope, and as I looked around that little room, I began to feel that hope flicker inside me again. My mother spent countless hours knitting baby clothes, filling our quiet moments with soft conversation about anything except the wedding, anything except what had happened. But even their love and care couldn't completely shield me from the loneliness. I felt abandoned, not just by Aiden, but by everything I had thought I knew about love and family. I thought I had built something real with Aiden, that we were in this together, that nothing could tear us apart. I had been wrong. His silence, his complete refusal to reach out, cut deeper than anything else. He believed his mother's lies, and that was something I couldn't forgive so easily. Aiden's absence weighed heavily on me. Every day I would check my phone, hoping for a message, some kind of sign that he cared enough to try to reach out, even if just to hear my side of the story. But there was nothing. No calls, no texts, not even a formal cancellation of our shared apartment lease. It was as though I no longer existed in his life, and I couldn't help but wonder, had he ever truly loved me? How could someone who claimed to love me walk away so easily? There were moments when the sadness would threaten to swallow me whole. I'd be sitting at the kitchen table, staring at the empty spot across from me where Aiden had sat during our late-night talks, and it would hit me all over again. The life I thought we were building together was gone, swept away by a lie. But I couldn't stay in that place. I had a responsibility to myself and to my baby. I realized I had to stop waiting for Aiden to come to his senses. I had to move forward, no matter how much it hurt. And then the phone call came. It wasn't from Aiden, and it wasn't the message I'd been hoping for. It was from Sandra, my old boss at the marketing firm where I had worked before getting engaged. I hadn't heard from her in months, and part of me had almost forgotten about the job offer she had made before Aiden and I got serious. "Emma," she said when I picked up the phone, "we've missed you around here. We're launching a new digital marketing division, and I was wondering if you'd be interested in heading it up." My breath caught in my throat. I hadn't expected this. "But I'm 5 months pregnant," I admitted, feeling a wave of doubt wash over me. "Are you sure that's something you'd want?" There was a pause on the other end of the line. "Some of our best ideas come from sleep-deprived parents," Sandra said with a laugh. "When can you start?" I was taken aback. This was it, my chance to take control, to rebuild my life. A part of me wanted to say no, to let my pain be the reason I stayed stuck in my grief. But another part of me knew that I couldn't stay stuck. For the sake of my baby, for the sake of myself, I needed this. "I'll start as soon as you need me," I said, my voice firm. And just like that, my journey toward healing began. The next few days were a blur of phone calls, meetings, and strategizing, but amidst the chaos, I felt a sense of purpose returning to me. I wasn't just a victim of betrayal. I was a woman who had something to offer the world. I was someone who could still make a difference, even if the world around me was falling apart. As I dove into the work, something unexpected happened. My pregnancy, which had once felt like a source of shame, became a source of strength. I would rest my hand on my belly during client meetings, finding comfort in the little life growing inside me. I wasn't just doing this for me anymore. I was doing it for my child. Every email I sent, every project I completed, I did with the thought that I was building something that wasn't defined by betrayal or lies, but by hope and resilience. But even as I threw myself into work, a part of me couldn't let go of the unanswered questions. I had to know the truth. How had Victoria managed to create such convincing evidence? How could she have manipulated Aiden so thoroughly? Why had he believed her without giving me a chance to explain? And then it happened. I ran into Victoria one afternoon while I was grabbing a coffee at a local cafe. She was having lunch with a group of women, all of whom had been at my bridal shower just a few months ago. When she saw me, her face lit up with that smug, condescending smile I had come to dread. "Emma," she said, loud enough for her friends to hear, "you look well. I do hope you figured out who the father is by now." My heart stopped for a moment, the words stinging like a slap to the face. How dare she? How could she still be so cold, so unfeeling after everything that had happened? I could feel the anger bubbling up inside me, but I forced myself to stay calm. "I've always known who the father is, Victoria," I said, my voice steady, though my insides were churning. "What I don't understand is why you went to such lengths to destroy your son's happiness. But I suppose that's something only you can answer." Her smile faltered, and for the first time I saw something flicker in her eyes. Fear, maybe? Or guilt? I didn't know, but it was enough to make me feel a small sense of victory. I walked past her, ordered a decaf latte, and sat down in the corner of the cafe, my mind racing. How had I allowed her to control me for so long? How had I let her tear apart everything I had worked so hard for? But that moment, standing up to her, felt like a turning point. It was the first step in reclaiming my life, my identity, and my future. The next day, I began gathering the evidence. I took photos of my belly, of the nursery my father had lovingly painted, and I started documenting my ultrasounds. I needed to hold on to something, a tangible reminder of my truth. The one thing I wouldn't allow to be taken from me was the reality of my journey, my child's journey. No one could take that away. And slowly, piece by piece, I started to heal. I wasn't whole yet, but I was getting there. The pain wasn't gone, but I had learned something important. I didn't need Aiden's approval to be whole. I didn't need Victoria's validation to move forward. I had myself. I had my child. And that was enough. As the weeks went by, my life began to take on a different shape. I threw myself into my work, and for the first time in a long time, I felt like I had control over something. The world had turned upside down after the wedding fiasco, but now, at least in the office, I was finding some semblance of balance. The digital marketing division I was now heading was growing, and I was making waves. I wasn't just rebuilding my life, I was creating something entirely new. But even as I worked tirelessly, the pain of the past still lingered. I woke up every day with the ghost of Aiden's betrayal hanging over me. I couldn't escape the memory of him walking away from me that day. His eyes, cold and distant, still haunted me at night, and I couldn't help but replay the moments in my head, questioning what went wrong. How could someone I had loved so deeply turn on me so easily? The questions gnawed at me, but the answers seemed more elusive than ever. I had learned to keep my emotions in check at work. I didn't let the hurt show. I had a reputation to uphold, and I wasn't going to let my personal life interfere with my professional one. But the truth was, the emotional toll was more exhausting than I'd ever imagined. Every day felt like I was carrying a weight I had to hide from the world. One morning, as I sat at my desk reviewing the latest project updates, my phone buzzed. The name on the screen made my heart stop. Aiden. My fingers hesitated over the screen, and for a moment I debated not answering. What could he possibly want? After all this time, after abandoning me without a word, why was he reaching out now? Against my better judgment, I answered. "Emma," his voice came through the phone, hesitant and low. "I need to talk to you." I felt a lump form in my throat, my chest tightening with a mix of anger and something else, something I couldn't quite name. "What is it, Aiden?" My voice was firm, controlled, even though everything inside me was screaming at me to hang up. "I know I don't deserve your forgiveness," he continued, his words stumbling over each other. "But I've been doing a lot of thinking, and I realize how wrong I was. I should have trusted you, and I should have believed in us. I'm sorry, Emma. I'm so sorry for everything." I stayed silent for a moment, trying to process his words. Sorry? Sorry didn't feel like enough. Sorry didn't undo the hurt he caused, the way he had abandoned me without a second thought. Sorry didn't erase the lies his mother had told, and it certainly didn't make the pain of losing the future we had planned go away. But as I listened to the sincerity in his voice, I couldn't help but wonder if, Just maybe he had come to understand the gravity of what he'd done. "I don't know if sorry is enough, Aiden," I finally said, my voice softer than I intended. "You walked away from me when I needed you the most. You believed your mother's lies without even asking me for the truth." "I know," he replied quietly. "I should have never let her come between us. I've been so ashamed of what I did. I don't know what to say anymore. I've messed everything up." I wanted to yell at him, to demand answers, to ask how he could have been so easily manipulated. But as I looked down at my growing belly, I realized that this conversation wasn't just about him and me. It was about us, the family we had dreamed of, the family that I was still trying to build, even without him. "I don't need your apology, Aiden," I said, the words firm now. "I've moved on. I've had to. For my baby's sake, I've learned how to stand on my own. But I'm not sure I'll ever be able to forgive you for what you did." The silence on the other end of the line stretched for a long time. I could hear him breathing, could hear the weight of the regret in his exhale. "I understand," he said finally. "I don't expect you to forgive me. I just wanted you to know that I'm sorry. And if you ever want to talk, if you ever want to give me a chance to make things right, I'll be here." The words hung in the air between us, and I felt a pang of sadness in my chest. I had wanted this apology, wanted him to see the truth, but now that it was here, it felt too little, too late. I didn't know if I could ever let him back into my life, but I didn't know if I could ever completely let go either. "I don't know, Aiden," I said softly. "Maybe one day when I'm ready, we can talk. But right now, I need to focus on my future. I need to focus on what's best for my baby." "I understand," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "Goodbye, Emma." And just like that, he was gone again. I sat in the silence that followed, staring at the screen of my phone. The conversation had left me with more questions than answers. I wasn't sure what to make of his apology, or what to do with the lingering feelings that still surfaced every time I thought of him. But as I looked around my office, at the walls lined with awards and the growing digital marketing division, I realized something. I was okay. I wasn't whole yet, but I was getting there. I didn't need Aiden's forgiveness to feel complete. I didn't need his presence to validate my choices. What mattered was that I was building something for myself and my baby. I was in control now. The next few days were a blur of work, but a sense of calm began to settle over me. I was learning how to live without Aiden, how to stand on my own 2 feet, and not rely on anyone else's approval. I had become someone different, someone stronger, someone who didn't let the past dictate her future. But even as I worked, even as I found my way through this new chapter, the past had a way of creeping up on me. I started having dreams about Aiden, dreams where he apologized over and over again, begging me to forgive him. The dreams were haunting, and they left me with a sense of emptiness I couldn't shake. One afternoon, as I sat in my office, looking over some reports, my phone buzzed again. This time, it wasn't Aiden. It was Victoria. I hadn't heard from her since the wedding, hadn't seen her at all in the months that had passed. But there she was, on my phone screen, her name flashing in front of me. For a moment, I just stared at the screen, unsure of what to do. I wasn't sure I was ready for this. But I knew I had to face it. I had to confront her, just like I had confronted Aiden. I answered the call. "Emma?" Victoria's voice came through, shaky but still strong. "I know you don't want to hear from me, and I wouldn't blame you if you hung up, but I need to speak to you." I took a deep breath. "What do you want, Victoria?" "I've been thinking," she began, her words slow, almost hesitant. "I know I destroyed everything. I know I hurt you, and I know I hurt Aiden, but I can't live with myself anymore. I need you to know the truth." The truth. My heart skipped a beat. What was she talking about? Had she finally come to terms with the role she had played in all of this? "I'm listening," I said, my voice steady, though my insides were anything but calm. "I lied," she admitted, the words heavy with guilt. "I know it doesn't fix anything, but I want you to know that I fabricated everything. The paternity test results, the photos, the documents, it was all fake. I thought I was doing what was best for Aiden. I thought I was protecting him from you, but all I did was destroy everything. I'm so sorry, Emma. I can't undo what I've done, but I need you to know the truth." The phone call from Victoria stayed with me long after it ended. Her words, raw with guilt and regret, echoed in my mind, refusing to fade away. I lied, she had said. I fabricated everything. I had waited so long for someone to admit the truth, for someone to acknowledge the pain they caused. But hearing it from Victoria, hearing it from the woman who had manipulated everything and everyone, left me with a strange mix of relief and bitterness. The truth had come, but it felt too little, too late. I wasn't sure what to make of her apology. Part of me wanted to feel vindicated, wanted to believe that this was the closure I had been searching for. But another part of me was angry. Angry that it had taken her this long to come clean. Angry that she had destroyed everything in the first place. And then there was Aiden. I couldn't help but wonder, if she had lied to me, how many more lies had been woven into the fabric of our relationship? Had he known the truth all along, or had he been just as deceived as I was? The days that followed were a blur. I went through the motions, kept working, kept up appearances, but inside, I felt like I was being pulled in 1,000 different directions. On one hand, I had made so much progress. My career was thriving, my baby was growing, and I had learned to lean on my family for support. But on the other hand, the ghosts of my past, of Aiden, of Victoria, of the lies and the betrayal, refused to let me go. I couldn't stop thinking about the truth. I couldn't stop wondering why it had taken Victoria this long to admit her role in all of it. If she had come to me sooner, if she had told me the truth before the wedding, would things have turned out differently? Would Aiden and I have had a chance to fix things? Or was it always meant to fall apart the way it did? I spent long hours late at night, sitting by the window, staring out at the city lights, and thinking about everything that had happened. I thought about Aiden, about the love we had shared, about the promises we had made to each other. And I thought about my baby, my little one, who was still kicking inside me, growing stronger every day. My child had been caught in the middle of all of this, and no matter what had happened between Aiden and me, no matter the pain I was feeling, I had to make sure that my baby would never experience the same heartache. I wasn't sure if I could ever forgive Aiden. I wasn't sure if I could ever trust him again. But I knew one thing for sure. I couldn't let the past define my future. I couldn't let Victoria's lies or Aiden's betrayal dictate who I was going to become. I had to keep moving forward. I found myself back at work the following week, burying myself in meetings and project deadlines. The marketing division I was leading was growing quickly, and I had been given more responsibility than I ever could have imagined. It felt good to be in control of something, to know that I was building something from scratch. I had always been a driven person, and now, more than ever, I needed to channel my energy into something positive. But even as I worked, the feelings of emptiness lingered. I couldn't escape the reality that Aiden was still out there, still a part of my life, even if he wasn't physically present. He had left me behind, but his absence created a void that I couldn't fill. The guilt of not being able to fully cut him out of my life weighed heavily on me. I didn't want him to have any power over me, but the memories of him, of the love we shared, of the plans we had made, kept resurfacing. Then one day, something unexpected happened. It was a Friday afternoon when I received another message, but this time it wasn't from Victoria. It was from Aiden. His name popped up on my phone, and my heart skipped a beat. I didn't know what to expect from him, but the emotions that rushed through me were overwhelming. I had imagined this moment 100 times, but now that it was here, I had no idea how to respond. I opened the message. "Emma," it started, "I know this is a lot to ask, but I need to see you. I've made so many mistakes, and I owe it to you to hear you out. I want to explain everything. I want to do right by you, if you'll let me." I stared at the message for a long time, my fingers hovering over the screen. I had been waiting for this, hadn't I? Waiting for him to come to me, to admit his mistakes, to show me that he cared. But now that it was here, I wasn't sure what I wanted anymore. My feelings were tangled, a mix of anger, sadness, and longing. I wasn't sure if I was ready to hear what he had to say, if I even wanted to listen. I put the phone down and took a deep breath. I couldn't make this decision in a rush. I needed time, time to think, time to decide what I wanted from him, if anything at all. The following weekend, I took a trip to the beach. I hadn't been out of the city in months, and I needed some space to clear my head. I rented a small cabin by the ocean, and for the first time in a long time, I felt the weight of the world lift off my shoulders. The sound of the waves crashing against the shore was calming, and I spent the days walking along the beach, letting my mind wander, letting the salty air fill my lungs. It was during one of these walks that I realized something important. I had been so focused on the past, on Aiden's betrayal, on Victoria's lies, that I had neglected to see the future. My future, and my baby's future. I couldn't keep holding on to the past, couldn't keep letting the hurt define me. I needed to build something new, something strong and lasting, something that wasn't defined by Aiden or his mother, but by me, by what I wanted for my life. When I returned to the city, I was different, stronger. I still had doubts, still had pain, but I knew now that I wasn't going to let it control me anymore. I had been through the worst, and if I could survive that, I could survive anything. A week later, I agreed to meet Aiden. The meeting was set for a small cafe on the outskirts of town, a neutral space where we could talk without too much attention. When I arrived, I saw him sitting at a table near the window, looking the same as he had when I first met him. Handsome, polished, but somehow older, weighed down by the guilt and regret that seemed to radiate off him. As I approached, I felt a tightness in my chest, but I pushed it aside. This was my chance to reclaim my power, to take control of my emotions, and to decide if I was willing to let him back into my life. "Emma," Aiden said softly when he saw me, his voice cracking slightly. "Thank you for agreeing to meet me." I nodded, taking a seat across from him. I didn't know what to say, so I let him speak first. "I've been doing a lot of thinking," he began, his eyes focused on his hands. "I've been selfish, and I've hurt you in ways I can never take back. I can't change what I did, but I can tell you that I'm sorry. I know it doesn't fix anything, but I need you to know that I regret everything. Walking away from you, not trusting you, not being there when you needed me most." His words hit me like a punch to the gut, and I could feel the tears welling up in my eyes. I had waited so long to hear this, and now that it was here, I wasn't sure how I felt. "Why now?" I asked, my voice steady but laced with hurt. "Why did it take you so long to come to me? Why did you believe your mother's lies without even asking me?" Aiden looked up at me, his eyes filled with regret. "I was weak," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I let her control me. I thought I was doing what was best for you, for us, but I was wrong. I should have trusted you. I should have fought for you." I swallowed hard, trying to process the flood of emotions coursing through me. "I don't know if I can forgive you," I said quietly, the words tasting bitter on my tongue. "I don't know if I can ever forget what you did to me, Aiden. You walked away from me without even giving me a chance to explain." "I know," he whispered, "and I can't ask for your forgiveness. I just need you to know that I'm sorry. And if you ever want to talk, if you ever want to give me a chance to make things right, I'll be here." I stared at him for a long time, my heart torn between the man I once loved and the reality of who he was now. I didn't know if I could ever go back to the way things were, but I knew one thing. This conversation was the first step in finding my peace. The weeks following my meeting with Aiden felt like a blur. There was no dramatic shift, no sudden resolution to the pain I had been carrying. It was more like a slow, deliberate unspooling of emotions, moments of clarity followed by waves of doubt. I had agreed to meet with him, but even now, I wasn't sure what I expected from that conversation. Did I hope that his apology would magically heal the wounds he had caused? Did I think that after everything, we could just pick up where we left off, like none of this had ever happened? The answer, of course, was no. I couldn't go back. There was no going back to the person I had been before everything fell apart. I was no longer the naive woman who believed in the fairy tale love Aiden and I had once shared. And yet there was still a part of me that wasn't ready to fully close that chapter. The door was cracked open, and I was standing in the threshold, unsure of whether I wanted to walk away or take a step back inside. But I didn't have the luxury of waiting forever for a resolution that might never come. I had a life to live, a child to raise, and work to focus on. The truth was, I had been building something new for myself in the wake of the chaos Aiden and Victoria had left behind. My career was flourishing, and with each passing day, I found more strength in the fact that I could stand on my own 2 feet. My little one, who had been my constant source of hope and love throughout this whole ordeal, was growing stronger every day. The more I thought about it, the more I realized that maybe I didn't need Aiden's forgiveness or his approval to move forward. I could build a future without him. I had learned that the hardest part of healing wasn't necessarily the wound itself. It was learning to live with it, to acknowledge it without letting it define who I was. I was learning to carry the scars of betrayal, but not letting them take over my life. And in that process, I was finding peace. But just as I thought I was making progress, something unexpected happened. It was a rainy Tuesday when I got a call from my mother. Her voice was tight, strained, and I immediately knew something was wrong. "Emma, honey, it's your father," she said, her voice breaking slightly. "He's in the hospital." I felt the blood drain from my face. "What happened? Is he okay?" "There was an accident," she explained, her words rushing out. "He slipped on the stairs while he was cleaning the gutters. He's in surgery now, but they're saying it's serious." I could hear her trying to hold it together, but the panic in her voice was unmistakable. Without thinking, I grabbed my coat and ran out the door. I didn't even bother to grab my purse, just my phone and my keys. I couldn't bear the thought of my father, the man who had been my rock, my protector, the one person who had always been there for me, being hurt. I arrived at the hospital in a haze, the rain pelting down as I rushed inside. My mother was waiting in the lobby, her eyes red from crying, her hands trembling. As soon as she saw me, she pulled me into a tight hug. "Mom, is he going to be okay?" I asked, my voice shaky. "What did the doctor say?" "They're optimistic," she said, but even her words felt hollow. "But they still need to do some tests. I'm so scared, Emma." I held her tighter, trying to give her some semblance of strength, even as my own fears threatened to overwhelm me. I knew my father was strong, but this was different. This wasn't just a simple fall. This was something that could change everything. Hours passed in what felt like minutes, and the only thing I could do was wait. I spent the time pacing the waiting room, checking my phone, and distracting myself from the anxiety building up in my chest. There was nothing else I could do. All I could do was wait and pray. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the doctor came in. His expression was serious, but not alarmed. "Miss Donovan," he said, addressing me, "your father came through surgery well. The injury was serious, but he's stable now. We'll need to monitor him closely, but he's going to be okay." Relief flooded over me, and for a moment I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. My mother broke down in tears, and I stood there, frozen, before finally stepping forward to hug her. After the initial wave of relief passed, my mind couldn't help but wander back to Aiden. I hadn't heard from him since our meeting, and yet here I was, dealing with my father's health scare, and the first person I wanted to call was Aiden. I needed him in that moment, even if I wasn't sure if I could trust him again. But I couldn't do that. I couldn't call him for comfort. I had already given him the chance to explain himself, and now I had to learn how to handle things on my own. I had been doing it for months, and I had to remind myself that I didn't need him to make it through. It was my family, my parents, my baby that I needed. That night, after everything had settled down, I sat in my father's hospital room, watching him sleep, his breathing steady but shallow. I had promised myself that I would focus on the future, that I wouldn't let the past consume me. But in that moment, I couldn't help but think about everything that had happened. I couldn't help but think about Aiden and what might have been. But as I sat there, I realized that what I had built with Aiden, whatever it was over. And it wasn't about the betrayal anymore. It was about the fact that I had let someone else's actions control me for far too long. I had allowed Victoria's lies and Aiden's silence to dictate my every move, and I had spent so much energy trying to salvage something that wasn't meant to be. My father's breathing slowed as he slipped into a deeper sleep, and I sat there quietly, letting the weight of everything wash over me. I had been through so much already, and yet, here I was, still standing, still breathing, still capable of moving forward. I wasn't going to let my past, my heartbreak, or my fears hold me back. I couldn't. I thought about my baby, who was due to arrive in just a few short months. My child would grow up in a world where I was in control, where my choices, my strength, and my love for them would define the future. Not Aiden's absence, not Victoria's lies, but the love and hope I carried inside me. And for the first time in a long time, I felt a sense of peace. Not because everything was perfect, far from it, but because I knew, without a doubt, that I could face whatever came next. I was ready for whatever life had in store, even if it wasn't the life I had once imagined. The next day, my father was awake, his usual grin plastered on his face despite the pain he was in. I sat by his bedside, holding his hand, and he squeezed mine in return. "I'm not going anywhere, kiddo," he said with a wink. "We've got a lot more time to spend together, and you've got a baby on the way. I'm going to spoil that kid rotten." And for the first time in months, I laughed. A real laugh, one that came from the heart. In that moment, I realized that the world wasn't as bleak as I'd thought. There was still so much left for me to experience, so much left to fight for. It was time to move forward. And this time, I was doing it for me and for my baby. The days after my father's recovery passed slowly but steadily, like the ebb and flow of the ocean that seemed to calm my mind whenever I visited him at the hospital. Each day felt like a small victory for both him and me. While I sat by his side, holding his hand, watching him laugh and talk, I realized just how much I had taken for granted before everything had fallen apart. My family, my career, the life I was building for my child, they were the constants I needed. I could rebuild everything, piece by piece, and maybe this time I could do it without relying on anyone else. As my father slowly regained his strength, I focused more on work. The digital marketing division had grown exponentially since I'd taken the reins, and I was starting to feel like I was truly coming into my own. It wasn't just about surviving anymore. It was about thriving. It felt empowering. The way I could make decisions and lead a team, the way I could shape this project and see it flourish. My father, still recovering but in much better spirits, would often ask me how work was going, and I could see the pride in his eyes as I told him about my successes. He would grin, proud of the woman I was becoming, even if it wasn't the path he had once envisioned for me. Despite all the progress I was making, there was still something lurking in the background, something I had avoided confronting for far too long. I hadn't heard from Aiden since our meeting weeks ago, and yet he lingered in my thoughts more often than I cared to admit. His apology, though it came too late, had opened a door in me I hadn't realized I was still holding on to. The memory of him, of us, had stayed with me, a painful reminder of what had been and what could have been. I kept telling myself that I didn't need him. I had my own life now. I had my baby. I had my work. But the truth was, Aiden's absence was like a wound that wouldn't heal. I couldn't escape it, couldn't stop thinking about him. I knew it wasn't healthy, but it was what it was. One evening, as I sat in my living room, sorting through some baby clothes and planning out the nursery, my phone buzzed on the coffee table. I glanced down and froze. It was Aiden. I didn't hesitate this time. I picked up the phone before I could second-guess myself. "Hello?" I said, my voice steady, but my heart hammering in my chest. "Emma," his voice came through, soft and hesitant. "I know I've been distant, and I know I don't have the right to ask for anything, but I've been thinking about you a lot, about everything, and I just wanted to know how you're doing." For a moment, I didn't know what to say. The flood of emotions that hit me was overwhelming, and for a second, I wanted to just hang up. I wanted to tell him I was fine, that I didn't need him in my life anymore, but I couldn't. His voice, the same voice that had once been my comfort, was still in my head, and I couldn't just shut it out. "I'm doing okay," I said finally, keeping my tone as neutral as possible. "I'm working. I'm taking care of myself. And the baby is doing great." There was a pause on the other end of the line. I could hear him breathing, as though he was trying to gather the right words, and for a split second, I felt a flicker of hope. Maybe this was it. Maybe this was the moment we could finally talk about everything. The truth, the pain, the future. But then the weight of the past hit me again. The betrayal, the lies, the way he had walked away from me. It was too much to just forgive, too much to let go. "I've been thinking about you too, Emma," Aiden continued, his voice shaky now. "I don't know what I was thinking when I let my mother control me like that. I don't know why I let her tear us apart. I've been so miserable without you. I miss you. I miss us." My heart twisted in my chest. The words were exactly what I had wanted to hear, months ago, before the wedding, before everything fell apart. But now they felt empty, like a hollow echo of something that could never be fixed. I took a deep breath, steadying myself before I spoke. Aiden, I began, my voice firm, I don't know what to say. I don't know if I can trust you again. You left me. You walked away without even asking for my side of the story. You believed your mother's lies over me. That's not something I can just forget. I know, he said, his voice breaking. I know I can't undo what I did, but I've learned a lot since then. I've been seeing a therapist, trying to figure out how I let her manipulate me. I know I hurt you, Emma, and I know I can't ask you to forgive me, but I need you to know how sorry I am. The words hung in the air, and for a moment I was lost in the silence. A part of me wanted to forgive him, to let him back into my life. But another part of me, the stronger part, knew that it wasn't that simple. I had changed. I had moved on. I was no longer the woman who had waited for him to choose her. You should have trusted me, Aiden, I said softly, my heart heavy. I needed you to believe in us. I needed you to stand by me, especially when things got hard. But instead, you let your mother tear us apart, and I can't keep living like that. I understand, he whispered, the words filled with regret. I wish I could go back and change everything. I wish I could fix it. But you can't, I replied gently. And neither can I. We've both made mistakes, and maybe that's something we'll have to live with. But I can't let it consume me anymore. I have a baby to think about. I have to focus on building a life for them. I can't keep holding on to what we had. There was another long pause, and I could feel the weight of his regret across the phone line. I understand, he said quietly, and I'll respect your decision, Emma. I just wanted you to know that I'm sorry. I closed my eyes, feeling the finality of the conversation settle in. Goodbye, Aiden, I said softly, my heart aching as I spoke the words I had been avoiding for so long. Goodbye, Emma, he whispered back. And with that, the call ended. I sat there for a long time, my phone in my hand, staring at the screen as the silence enveloped me. I had finally said goodbye. To Aiden. To the past. To the pain that had followed me for months. And yet the emptiness still lingered. Saying goodbye didn't magically erase the hurt. It didn't magically fix everything that had been broken. But I knew that I had done the right thing. I had chosen myself. I had chosen my child. And I had chosen a future that wasn't defined by betrayal or regret. It was hard, but I knew I had made the right decision. The days that followed were a quiet sort of healing. I spent more time with my father, helping him through his recovery and focusing on the future. My work continued to grow, and I started planning for the baby's arrival, getting the nursery ready and preparing for the new chapter in my life. The pain of the past wasn't gone, but it was no longer my focus. I had a new life to build, one filled with love, strength, and hope. And as I looked forward to the future, I couldn't help but feel a sense of peace. Not because everything was perfect, far from it, but because I had learned to let go. I had learned to stand on my own, to let go of the past and embrace what was to come. And with my baby on the way, I knew that the best was yet to come. The days had begun to feel like they were passing by in a blur. My baby was growing, and so was my strength. There were days when I still felt the weight of the past, the betrayal, the lies, the pain of losing someone I had once imagined a future with, but those days were becoming fewer and farther between. I had learned to let go of Aiden, to let go of the toxic ties that had kept me anchored to a past I no longer recognized. I spent my days focusing on work, my family, and the preparations for my baby. The nursery was nearly finished, with soft yellow walls and a small crib waiting for the baby to finally arrive. My father had continued to improve steadily, and I found myself spending more time with him, helping him regain his strength. It was comforting to see him come back to life after his accident. A reminder that, even in the face of hardship, we could still rebuild. He was a living testament to resilience. But there was still something missing. The emptiness that had lingered after my conversation with Aiden hadn't completely gone away. I had made peace with the fact that Aiden was not part of my life anymore. I had moved on, or at least that's what I had convinced myself of. Yet there was something deep inside me, a nagging feeling that I couldn't shake. It had been months since we last spoke, but I still found myself thinking about him. I still found myself wondering if he ever regretted walking away from me, if he ever wondered what could have been. But those questions, I knew, didn't matter anymore. What mattered now was my baby, my future, the life I was building on my own terms. The phone call came on an ordinary Tuesday afternoon. I was sitting at my desk, going over some reports for the new digital marketing project I was spearheading when my phone buzzed. I glanced at the screen, expecting it to be a message from my mother or perhaps a colleague. But when I saw the name on the screen, my heart skipped a beat. It was Brandon. Brandon. I hadn't heard from him in over a year. The last time we had spoken, he had made his feelings clear, that he wasn't ready for a relationship, that he needed to figure out his own life before he could even consider being with me. After everything that had happened with Aiden, I had put Brandon out of my mind. I told myself that I didn't need anyone else to complete me. I was fine on my own. But seeing his name on my phone, something stirred inside me. Something I hadn't expected. I didn't hesitate this time. I picked up the phone, my palms suddenly sweaty. Emma? Brandon's voice came through, low and hesitant. I hope I'm not interrupting anything. No, it's fine, I replied, trying to sound casual. What's up? I've been thinking a lot about you, he said, his voice sounding different, as though he had something weighing on him. And I think it's time we talk. I need to explain something to you. I felt my stomach tighten. Brandon, what's going on? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. I made a mistake, he said. A big mistake. I shouldn't have pushed you away when you needed me. I should have been there for you. I've realized that, and it's been eating me up inside. I felt a mix of emotions flood over me. Confusion, anger, and a strange sense of relief. What are you talking about? I asked, trying to piece it all together. After everything that happened with Aiden, after I had to go through all of that alone, you're telling me now that you regret not being there? I do regret it, he said, his voice earnest. I was so focused on my own fears, on what I thought was the right thing to do, that I completely shut you out. I should have trusted you. I should have trusted us. I sat there, staring at my desk, processing his words. I hadn't expected this, not from him. It had been so long, and I had moved on. Or so I thought. But hearing him speak like this, hearing the sincerity in his voice, made something in me waver. Did I still have feelings for him? Was it possible to forgive him for what had happened? I swallowed, trying to gather my thoughts. Brandon, I don't know what you want from me. You pushed me away when I needed you the most. You made your choice, and I had to deal with the consequences. And I did. I moved on. I learned to live without you. I know, he said quietly, and I'm sorry for that. I don't expect you to just forgive me, Emma, but I wanted you to know that I've been working on myself. I've been doing a lot of thinking, and I don't want to keep living with this regret. I want to make things right, if you'll let me. I didn't know how to respond. Part of me wanted to push him away, to remind him of all the reasons why I didn't need him in my life anymore. But another part of me, a part I hadn't realized was still there, wanted to give him another chance. I wasn't sure if I could trust him again, but I couldn't deny the pull I still felt toward him. The feelings I had for him had never truly disappeared. What do you want from me, Brandon? I asked, my voice softer now. What do you think can happen between us now? I don't know, he admitted. I just know that I want to try. I want to be there for you, Emma. I want to be a part of your life again, and I know it's going to take time to rebuild that trust, but I'm willing to do whatever it takes. I sat there for a long time, listening to the silence on the other end of the line. I didn't know what to say. I didn't know if I could go back to a time when I relied on him, when I thought he was the one I would spend my life with. I had built so much on my own, and I wasn't sure if I was ready to open that door again. I need time, Brandon, I said finally. I can't just forget everything that's happened, and I need to focus on my baby, on building a future. I can't get caught up in the past again. I understand, he said, his voice heavy. I'm not asking for everything all at once. I just want you to know that I'm here, and I'm willing to work through this. When you're ready. I let out a long breath, feeling the weight of his words settle over me. We'll see, Brandon, I said, my voice steady. But I can't promise anything. Okay, he replied softly. I'll wait. Take all the time you need. And with that, the conversation ended. I sat in silence for a long time after I hung up, trying to process everything. Part of me felt relieved, like I could finally exhale after holding my breath for so long. But another part of me was conflicted. Could I let go of the hurt? Could I allow Brandon back into my life after everything he had done? I didn't know, but I wasn't going to rush into anything. The next few days were a blur of work, family, and baby preparations. My father's recovery was progressing well, and I focused on spending as much time with him as I could. The nursery was coming together beautifully, and I was excited about the future I was building, the future for my baby. But in the quiet moments, when I had nothing else to think about, my mind kept returning to Brandon. And I couldn't shake the feeling that this was far from over. There were still so many questions, so much uncertainty. But one thing was clear. I wasn't the same person I had been before. I was stronger, wiser, and ready to face whatever came next. I didn't need Brandon to complete me, but maybe, just maybe, I could allow him a place in my life again. But that would take time. I had learned the hard way that love couldn't be rushed, and neither could forgiveness. Life is full of challenges, and at times it may feel like the weight of the world is on your shoulders. But one of the most important lessons I've learned is that healing starts with forgiving yourself. When you face betrayal, heartbreak, or difficult circumstances, it's easy to get stuck in the past, replaying events and wondering what could have been. But true peace comes when you stop letting those moments define you. The people who hurt you may never apologize, but choosing to let go of the resentment frees you, not them. You don't have to forget, but you do need to learn to move forward, step by step. Surround yourself with those who love and support you, and focus on what you can control: your response, your growth, and your future. Life may not always go the way you expect, but that doesn't mean you can't make it beautiful. Trust yourself, believe in your strength, and remember that it's never too late to start fresh. Embrace the challenges, learn from them, and keep your heart open to new possibilities. Your journey is yours to shape, and the best is yet to come.